The twins, Haruto and Akiko, waited backstage, their hands gently resting on the polished wood of their pianos. Their hearts were beating faster than usual. It was their first time performing on live television in front of so many people. The bright lights of the studio shone through the curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. They could hear the murmur of the audience outside and the occasional click of cameras. The air was thick with excitement, nervous energy, and a little fear. Haruto took a deep breath and looked at his sister. Akiko gave him a small, reassuring nod. They had practiced this piece countless times at home, in small music rooms, and at local competitions, but nothing compared to this stage. This was not just any performance. This was a moment that could define their careers. The twins had dreams bigger than their small town. They wanted to show the world their talent, and they wanted to prove to themselves that they were ready for this moment. Behind the stage, the production crew was busy adjusting cameras, checking microphones, and making sure every detail was perfect. The twins could hear the whispers of the crew, the last-minute instructions, and the soft clatter of piano keys being tested. The backstage was a mix of chaos and calm, with everyone trying to make the performance flawless. Haruto and Akiko focused on each other instead of the noise, sharing a quiet understanding that they were in this together. Moments before going on stage, the twins could hear the audience clapping for the performers before them. The sound was overwhelming but also motivating. Akiko closed her eyes for a brief moment, picturing the music flowing from her fingers. Haruto did the same. They imagined every note, every pause, and every chord. It was as if they were already inside the music, letting it guide them. Then, a voice echoed from the side of the stage. It was Maestro Takahashi, the famous conductor known for his strict standards and sharp criticisms. He was walking past, his eyes briefly scanning the twins. The air seemed to tense up. The twins knew about him. Stories of his harsh comments and high expectations were famous in the music world. He had humiliated many young musicians on live TV before, but Haruto and Akiko were determined not to let fear control them. They had worked hard, and they believed in their talent. As they walked to the stage, the bright lights hit them fully. The audience was a sea of faces, each waiting for the twins to play. Some looked curious, others skeptical. The twins could feel the weight of their expectations. But they also felt the thrill of being part of something bigger than themselves. They were about to play a piece that was difficult, even for experienced musicians. Every hand movement, every glance, every touch of the piano keys had to be precise. They had practiced endlessly, but now it was real. Haruto sat at the piano first, his fingers hovering over the keys. Akiko sat at her piano, matching her brother's posture. They shared a small, confident smile. The conductor, Maestro Takahashi, raised his hand slightly, as if challenging them silently. The twins ignored the gesture. Their minds focused only on the music, not the fear, not the audience, and not the conductor. They had learned that the moment they let doubt creep in, the music could falter. And they were not going to let that happen. The announcer's voice came over the speakers, introducing them to the audience. The applause was polite but not overwhelming. Some people were unsure of what to expect. The twins could feel every eye in the room on them. Haruto placed his fingers on the keys, feeling the smoothness beneath them. Akiko did the same. The sound of the piano was familiar, comforting even amidst the tension. They took a final deep breath. The room seemed to hold its breath with them. It was quiet except for the faint hum of the lights and the distant murmurs of the audience. Haruto pressed the first key. The sound resonated across the stage. Akiko followed with the next. The music began to flow, delicate at first, then slowly building. The twins moved together perfectly, as if they shared one mind. Every note was intentional, every rhythm synchronized. Even though they were focused, they couldn't completely ignore Maestro Takahashi. His eyes were fixed on them, scrutinizing every movement. He leaned slightly forward in his chair, the kind of look that could unsettle even the most confident musician. But the twins were not here to please him. They were here to express the music they had trained for their entire lives. They let the music guide them, letting their fingers speak where words could not. As the first part of the piece ended, there was a small pause. The twins held their last notes, letting the sound linger in the air. The audience was silent, captivated. Haruto looked at Akiko, and she nodded ever so slightly. They knew the next part would be even more challenging, and they were ready. They had spent months preparing for this moment, imagining the exact feelings they would face. The fear, the excitement, the pressure, it was all part of the performance. In that backstage room just a few minutes ago, they had been scared, unsure if they were ready. But now, on stage, they felt a calm they had never known. The music was theirs, and the stage, the lights, and even the intimidating conductor were just part of the story they were about to tell through sound. The twins were ready to face whatever came next, knowing that this was the moment they had worked for their entire lives. They were not just playing for applause. They were playing to show who they were and what they could do. The first part of their journey had begun, and already, everyone in the room could feel the magic starting to unfold. The twins were no longer just children playing on stage. They were musicians, artists, and storytellers ready to capture the hearts of the audience. And they knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning of a performance that would be remembered for a long time. The twins had barely finished their first few notes when a hush fell over the audience. They could sense the intensity in the room. Every eye seemed to be watching them, waiting to see if they would falter. Haruto and Akiko felt the weight of the maestro's gaze behind them. He sat with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He was known for being harsh and unyielding, but the twins refused to let his presence shake their focus. They had prepared for this moment, and they knew that letting fear in would ruin the music. As the piece continued, the twins began a complicated section that required exact timing and deep concentration. Their fingers moved quickly and confidently over the keys, each note blending seamlessly into the next. The audience, at first unsure, began to lean forward in their seats, sensing something remarkable was happening. Every chord, every melody, and every pause was precise, yet carried a feeling of emotion that words could not capture. Suddenly, Maestro Takahashi made a comment on live television, questioning whether the twins could handle the more challenging parts of the piece. His voice was sharp, almost cutting, and for a brief moment, the twins could feel the tension rise. The audience reacted with a mix of surprise and curiosity. Some whispered to each other, wondering if the young musicians could meet the challenge. Haruto and Akiko, however, didn't let the comment break their focus. Instead, it ignited a determination in them, a quiet fire that made their playing even more precise and expressive. Akiko's hands danced across the keys, moving faster than the eye could follow. Haruto matched her pace perfectly, and together they created a sound that seemed larger than life. The music took on a life of its own, filling the room with a mixture of intensity and beauty. Every note was calculated but also full of feeling. The audience began to understand that this was no ordinary performance. The twins were not just playing music. They were telling a story of skill, courage, and unbreakable focus. The maestro leaned forward slightly, his expression shifting from skepticism to surprise. He had faced many young musicians before, but the twins were different. Their precision, their harmony, and their ability to respond to the pressure of the live audience were remarkable. He tried to follow the pace, attempting to anticipate their movements, but even he struggled to keep up with their rapid, flawless execution. As the piece moved into the most challenging sections, the audience held their breath. The twins had to navigate complex chords, sudden shifts in tempo, and intricate harmonies that tested even the most experienced pianists. Every mistake could have been magnified on live television, but Haruto and Akiko were in perfect sync. Their years of practice and countless hours spent studying the music were paying off. They didn't just play the notes, they understood the music, felt it in their bones, and let it guide their performance. A moment of tension arose when the twins approached the crescendo, the most demanding part of the piece. The maestro's eyes widened slightly as he realized the twins were approaching a section that even he found difficult. He leaned closer, almost unconsciously, his hands gripping the edge of the conductor's podium. The audience sensed the drama, the quiet battle unfolding between the young twins and the renowned conductor. Whispers traveled through the seats. Could they really finish this? Could they overcome this challenge? Haruto and Akiko, however, remained calm. They didn't see the maestro as an obstacle. They saw him as part of the stage, another element in the story of their performance. Their eyes met briefly, sharing a silent understanding and mutual encouragement. In that moment, they were more than siblings. They were partners moving as one. The audience could feel the connection between them, a bond that translated into the music and filled every corner of the room. As they reached the most intricate passages, the twins' fingers moved almost faster than the eye could follow. The harmonies were complex, the rhythm shifting in ways that would challenge even seasoned musicians. But Haruto and Akiko navigated the piece with grace and precision. Every note was perfect, every transition smooth. The maestro, for the first time, seemed caught off guard. He had seen many talented performers, but the twins' ability to maintain focus, expression, and control all at once was extraordinary. The audience, too, began to change. Initial curiosity turned into admiration, and soon, people were sitting on the edge of their seats, fully immersed in the music. Some held their breath, some closed their eyes to feel the melody, and others whispered quietly to the people next to them, amazed at what they were witnessing. The twins were no longer just performers. They were storytellers, conveying emotions that went beyond words. The tension in the room reached its peak when the maestro realized he could not follow the complexity of the piece. He had intended to challenge the twins, to test their limits, but instead, he found himself unable to keep up. Haruto and Akiko played with a confidence that was both bold and delicate. Each key pressed, each chord struck, built a world of sound that even the maestro could only admire silently. He had become a spectator to their talent, unable to influence the music with his usual authority. Despite the pressure, the twins did not falter. They played with a combination of technical skill and heartfelt emotion that captivated everyone in the room. Haruto's eyes focused on the keys, yet he seemed aware of the audience's reactions, letting their energy fuel his performance. Akiko, equally engaged, added subtle touches and variations that made the piece even more mesmerizing. Together, they created a performance that was technically flawless and emotionally powerful. As the piece neared its conclusion, the twins approached the final, most demanding section. The tension was palpable. Every eye in the room was on them, every ear tuned to their music. The maestro leaned back slightly, realizing that the twins were about to finish a section he himself could not complete. The audience sensed the momentousness of what was happening. They were witnessing not just a performance but a triumph of talent, dedication, and courage. Finally, the last notes rang out clear and perfect. The room fell silent for a brief moment, as if no one dared to breathe, letting the music settle in the air. Then, slowly, applause began to rise. It started with a few claps and grew louder, filling the auditorium. The audience stood, cheering and clapping, some with tears in their eyes. The twins smiled at each other, relieved but composed. They had done it. They had faced the maestro, the audience, and the pressure of live television. And they had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Backstage, the crew whispered in amazement, sharing the story of what had just happened. The maestro remained silent for a moment, then gave a rare nod of respect. He had been proven wrong in the best possible way. The twins had shown not only their technical skill but their courage and ability to perform under immense pressure. Haruto and Akiko had faced humiliation, doubt, and skepticism, yet they had transformed the experience into something beautiful and unforgettable. As they left the stage, the applause continued to echo. The twins knew that this moment would stay with them forever. They had not only played music, they had shared a story of determination, talent, and heart. The maestro, the audience, and even the television viewers would remember this performance for a long time. Haruto and Akiko had proven to the world that even under pressure, with doubt and skepticism surrounding them, true talent and dedication could shine through. As the applause began to settle, Haruto and Akiko took a brief pause, letting the sound of the audience wash over them. It was one thing to play on stage in front of a few local judges, but performing on live television brought a pressure that was hard to describe. Every movement, every note, every glance was being watched by thousands, maybe millions, and yet they felt a strange sense of calm. It was as if the music itself had become their shield against nerves and doubt. The twins had rehearsed this part of the piece endlessly. It was the section that could either make or break their performance. Now, standing on the stage, they could feel the challenge rising before them like a mountain. Maestro Takahashi's presence still loomed behind them, his eyes sharp and his expression unreadable. The twins knew that he had expected them to falter, and perhaps he even wanted them to fail. But Haruto and Akiko were determined not to give him the satisfaction. They had practiced for years for moments like this, and they were ready. Akiko looked at her brother and gave him a tiny nod. Haruto responded with a deep breath, and together they began the next sequence. This part of the piece required exact synchronization and a delicate balance of dynamics. The notes had to flow naturally, yet each one needed to hit perfectly. The twins had developed a way of communicating silently through subtle glances and movements. It was like they shared one mind, each anticipating the other's actions and responding instantly. As their fingers flew across the keys, the audience leaned in. The music had a rhythm and intensity that captured everyone's attention. Some people closed their eyes, letting the melody wash over them. Others sat forward, unable to look away. The energy in the room was electric. Every note the twins played was precise, yet full of feeling. It was clear that this was not just about technical skill. It was about expressing something deeper, something that touched the hearts of everyone listening. Suddenly, Maestro Takahashi shifted in his seat. He had seen countless young musicians attempt this piece, and most had failed. The twins, however, were moving through the complex passages with grace and confidence. He leaned forward, almost unconsciously, as if trying to keep up with their fingers. But the music was too fast, too precise, and he found himself struggling to anticipate the next note. For the first time, the maestro seemed caught off guard. He was witnessing talent he could not control or predict. The audience, too, began to feel the tension. They could sense that something extraordinary was happening on stage. The twins were not just performing a difficult piece. They were transforming it into a story, a performance that communicated emotion and skill simultaneously. Whispers spread through the room, expressions of awe appearing on faces everywhere. Some viewers leaned closer to the screens, mesmerized by the sight of the twins moving in perfect harmony, their fingers striking each key with precision and confidence. Haruto felt a rush of excitement mixed with focus. The music demanded everything from him: concentration, emotion, and physical skill. Every hand movement, every subtle shift in weight, every breath had to be in sync with his sister. Akiko was equally absorbed, her eyes never leaving the keys, her mind fully in the music. They were no longer just two young musicians on a stage. They were a single force, united by rhythm, melody, and years of shared practice. As they reached a particularly difficult passage, the tension in the room rose even higher. The notes required exact timing, and the chords demanded strength and delicacy at the same time. One slip could ruin the flow, yet the twins moved through it flawlessly. Their hands flew across the keys like dancers, nimble and precise, and the music swelled with intensity. The audience was silent, collectively holding their breath, fully aware that they were witnessing something rare and remarkable. The maestro's eyes widened as he realized the twins were approaching the part of the piece that had challenged even him in his own practice. He had hoped to see them stumble, to expose any weakness, but instead, they navigated the complex section with skill and confidence that left him speechless. He could no longer follow the pace or anticipate the transitions. The audience, sensing his astonishment, grew even more captivated. Every note carried weight, every chord told a story, and the room seemed to vibrate with energy. The twins' performance continued, moving through each challenging sequence as if guided by instinct and passion. Their synchronization was flawless, their dynamics controlled yet expressive. The music flowed like a river, sometimes calm and gentle, other times rushing and powerful. Haruto and Akiko were in complete harmony, their shared understanding allowing them to anticipate the subtlest changes in tempo and emotion. The audience felt it too, the connection between the performers, the music, and the space around them. As the piece approached its climax, the twins faced the ultimate challenge. This section required technical precision, emotional depth, and physical endurance. It was the part of the composition that had defeated many before them, a segment so demanding that even seasoned musicians found it nearly impossible. Yet Haruto and Akiko pressed forward, each note executed with confidence and grace. The audience watched in awe, some holding back tears, others clapping quietly, unable to contain their admiration for what they were witnessing. The maestro, who had so often been the authority in these moments, could do nothing but watch. His previous intention to intimidate the twins had backfired completely. He leaned back, acknowledging silently that the twins' talent was undeniable. Even he, a master of the craft, could not match their speed, precision, and emotional expression. The audience, sensing the rare moment of humility from the famous conductor, erupted in admiration, giving the twins a silent victory before the final notes even rang out. With the final crescendo approaching, the twins played with renewed energy. The music became more powerful, more expressive, as they poured every ounce of concentration and emotion into their performance. Haruto's fingers danced across the keys. Akiko's hands mirrored his movements perfectly. Together, they created a sound that seemed larger than the room itself, filling the space with harmony, tension, and release. The audience was completely captivated, their eyes wide, their breaths held, their hearts racing with every chord. Finally, the last note rang out clear and pure. For a moment, the room was silent, as if the audience collectively paused to let the impact of the performance sink in. Then, the applause began, growing louder with each passing second. The audience leapt to their feet, clapping and cheering. The twins smiled at each other, a mix of relief and quiet triumph on their faces. They had done it. They had faced the maestro, the pressure, and the live audience, and they had come through stronger and more confident than ever. Backstage, the crew and production team whispered in astonishment, amazed at the skill and composure of the young twins. Even the maestro, who had intended to intimidate them, was forced to acknowledge their remarkable talent. Haruto and Akiko had not only performed flawlessly, they had transformed the stage into a place of inspiration and wonder. The twins knew that this moment would remain with them forever. They had played not just for applause but for expression, for mastery, and for the joy of music itself. As they left the stage, the audience continued to cheer, the sound echoing through the studio. Haruto and Akiko held their heads high, knowing that they had achieved something extraordinary. The maestro remained silent, his respect for the twins evident in the way he watched them leave. For the first time, the young musicians had not only met but exceeded the expectations placed upon them. They had shown that talent, dedication, and courage could overcome even the greatest challenges, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. The music had reached a point where every note mattered more than the last. Haruto and Akiko could feel the audience leaning forward, captivated by the story unfolding through their fingers. The twins had been performing for several minutes, yet the energy in the room had only grown stronger. Their focus was absolute, each movement precise, yet full of emotion. They were not thinking about the pressure, the cameras, or even Maestro Takahashi. They were thinking only about the music and each other. The maestro, who had been confident just moments ago, now sat rigidly in his chair. He had anticipated mistakes, hesitations, or signs of nervousness, but the twins continued with a level of skill and harmony that defied expectations. Every chord was perfectly placed, every rhythm carefully measured yet flowing naturally. Even he, a conductor with decades of experience, found himself struggling to follow the speed and subtlety of their performance. He had challenged them to test their limits, but the twins were rewriting the rules. Haruto and Akiko moved into a particularly complex section, a sequence filled with fast runs, sharp shifts in tempo, and intricate harmonies. Their hands flew across the keys, moving faster than many in the audience could process. The twins shared a subtle glance, acknowledging each other's movements without breaking the rhythm. Years of practicing together had created an unspoken language between them, allowing them to anticipate each other perfectly. The music was no longer just notes on a page. It had become a living, breathing expression of their combined talent. The audience was completely silent, absorbed in every sound. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them, while others stared wide-eyed at the twins' fingers as they moved with remarkable precision. Every breath seemed held, every heart in the room synchronized with the tempo of the music. Whispers of amazement began to ripple through the crowd, a shared recognition that something extraordinary was happening. The twins were performing not just a piece, but an emotional journey, taking everyone along with them. Maestro Takahashi leaned forward slightly, his eyes widening as he realized he could not follow the complexity of the piece. The section they had reached was one he had expected to see fail under pressure, yet they executed it flawlessly. Even he had to admit, silently, that the twins' performance was beyond anything he had imagined. He had built a reputation on critiquing young performers harshly, but now, he was rendered almost speechless by their skill and composure. For the first time, he was witnessing musicians who could challenge him, not just the music. As the twins approached the climax, the intensity increased. The music demanded both technical mastery and emotional depth, a combination that could overwhelm even the most seasoned performers. But Haruto and Akiko were ready. Each key struck was deliberate, each chord carefully placed, yet infused with feeling. The room seemed to vibrate with their energy. Every person in the audience was aware that they were experiencing something rare, a performance that would be remembered for years. Even the cameras seemed to pause, capturing each moment with precision, aware that history was unfolding. Haruto felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, but it was different this time. Instead of fear, it was pure focus and excitement. He could feel Akiko matching him perfectly, their hands moving in harmony. The difficult passages that had caused hours of frustration during practice now flowed effortlessly. It was as if the music had become a living entity, guiding them, demanding their full attention, and rewarding them with the thrill of shared achievement. The audience, too, felt this energy, captivated by every movement and sound. The maestro, now fully attentive, tried to keep pace, but it was impossible. The twins had reached a section of the piece that even he could not finish without effort. His usual confidence and authority had given way to astonishment. The audience noticed his reaction, a rare moment of humility from a man who rarely admitted anyone's skill surpassed his expectations. Haruto and Akiko, however, were unaware of the subtle shift behind them. They were fully absorbed in the music, allowing it to guide every note, every pause, every expression. The performance was not just technical, it was deeply emotional. Haruto could feel the narrative of the music, the highs and lows, the tension and release. Akiko matched him perfectly, adding nuance and emotion that made the piece come alive. The audience felt every moment, their emotions moving in rhythm with the twins. Some people held back tears, others clapped quietly, unable to contain themselves. The energy in the room was overwhelming, a shared experience between performers and audience that was rare and unforgettable. As the twins neared the final passages, the intensity reached its peak. The music required both stamina and precision, demanding that every note be perfect while conveying the depth of emotion intended by the composer. Haruto's fingers flew across the keys. Akiko mirrored him flawlessly, and together they created a sound that seemed larger than the room itself. The audience was completely mesmerized, every eye fixed on the twins, every ear tuned to the music. The maestro, though silent, could only watch in awe, acknowledging that he was witnessing something extraordinary. Every note was deliberate, yet free-flowing, each pause a calculated breath in the larger story. The twins' coordination was remarkable, a result of years spent practicing together, perfecting every detail. The audience sensed the bond between the siblings, their silent communication, and their shared passion. It was evident that this performance was not only a display of skill but also of heart, determination, and unity. The maestro, normally so imposing, now seemed humbled, unable to critique what was beyond his ability. With the final crescendo approaching, Haruto and Akiko poured everything into their performance. Each chord rang out with clarity, each movement precise and expressive. The energy in the room intensified as the music built, drawing the audience fully into the story. The twins were not just playing a piece. They were creating an experience, guiding everyone through a journey that required attention, patience, and emotional connection. The maestro's attempt to dominate or intimidate had failed completely, and the audience recognized the brilliance unfolding before them. Finally, the last notes rang out, resonating throughout the auditorium. For a moment, there was silence, a collective pause as the room absorbed the impact of what had just happened. Then the applause erupted, growing louder and louder. The audience leapt to their feet, cheering, clapping, and some even wiping away tears. Haruto and Akiko smiled at each other, a mix of relief, pride, and quiet triumph on their faces. They had done it. They had faced doubt, pressure, and scrutiny, and they had emerged victorious. Backstage, the crew and production team whispered among themselves, amazed at the twins' skill and composure. Even Maestro Takahashi, who had intended to challenge and intimidate them, was forced to acknowledge their talent. Haruto and Akiko had not only met expectations, they had exceeded them, creating a performance that was both technically brilliant and emotionally moving. It was a moment that would be remembered for a long time, a performance that transcended fear and doubt and celebrated the power of dedication, passion, and shared talent. As they left the stage, the applause continued to echo. Haruto and Akiko held their heads high, knowing that they had achieved something extraordinary. Maestro Takahashi remained seated, silently recognizing the rare talent he had witnessed. The twins had not only performed flawlessly, they had also inspired everyone who saw them. They had turned pressure into performance, doubt into determination, and expectation into awe. This was a moment that would shape their future and leave a lasting impression on all who witnessed it. The final section of the piece was the most demanding part of the performance. Haruto and Akiko knew it would require every ounce of focus, skill, and emotional connection they possessed. The entire room seemed to lean in, anticipating the moment when the twins would bring the music to its climax. Every member of the audience, from the television cameras to the spectators in the auditorium, could feel the tension. The twins were aware of it too, but instead of letting it weigh them down, they used it to fuel their energy. Haruto's fingers moved across the keys with precision and speed, striking each note with confidence. Akiko mirrored him perfectly, adding depth and emotion to the melody. They had practiced this section countless times, yet performing it live, under the bright lights and the gaze of a skeptical maestro, brought a unique challenge. Their years of training and countless hours of practice had prepared them for this exact moment, and they rose to the occasion with grace and determination. The audience was captivated. People were sitting on the edge of their seats, completely immersed in the music. The twins' synchronization was flawless, and the harmonies they produced seemed to fill the entire auditorium. Some viewers closed their eyes, letting the sound envelop them, while others watched the twins' hands in awe. The room was alive with energy, a collective experience of tension, beauty, and admiration. Maestro Takahashi, who had tried to intimidate the twins earlier, now watched silently, unable to interrupt or influence the performance. His eyes followed every movement, and for the first time, he seemed humbled by the sheer skill before him. The twins had reached a point in the piece that even he found challenging, yet they executed it flawlessly. The audience noticed his reaction, understanding the rare moment of respect being given to two young musicians. As the twins navigated the final sequences, the complexity of the music increased. Rapid arpeggios, sudden shifts in tempo, and intricate harmonies required precise timing and absolute concentration. Haruto and Akiko communicated silently through glances and subtle cues, their unspoken language guiding them through the most challenging passages. It was evident that this performance was the result of years of practice and a deep bond between siblings, allowing them to anticipate each other's movements instinctively. The music built gradually, rising to a powerful crescendo. Every note was executed with clarity and emotion, drawing the audience deeper into the performance. Haruto could feel the energy of the room, the collective focus of hundreds of people, and he channeled it into the music. Akiko responded in perfect harmony, their connection evident in every movement. The audience could sense the unity and trust between the twins, making the performance all the more compelling. As they approached the final, most challenging passage, the tension in the room became almost tangible. The maestro leaned forward slightly, realizing that the twins were about to complete a section of music that he himself had struggled to master. His previous skepticism had transformed into astonishment. He could no longer anticipate or control the performance, and the audience sensed the shift. Whispers of admiration spread through the auditorium, a shared recognition of the extraordinary talent on display. Haruto and Akiko pressed on, their fingers moving swiftly and accurately across the keys. The music was intense, emotional, and technically demanding, yet they executed it with precision and expression. Each chord, each note, each pause was deliberate, contributing to the larger story of the performance. The audience was captivated, experiencing the full range of emotion conveyed through the twins' music. Tears glistened in some eyes, while others were wide with amazement, unable to believe the skill and composure of the young performers. The maestro, now fully attentive, could only watch. He had intended to challenge the twins to see if they could falter under pressure, but they had not only met the challenge, they had surpassed it. He realized that the performance he was witnessing was beyond anything he had expected. The twins had taken the music and made it their own, expressing it with both technical mastery and heartfelt emotion. For a man of his experience, this was a rare and humbling moment. The final notes approached, and the twins poured every ounce of energy and focus into their playing. Haruto's fingers struck each key with precision, while Akiko added subtle nuances that elevated the performance to another level. The crescendo built to its peak, filling the room with sound that was both powerful and delicate. The audience held their breath, completely absorbed in the moment. The twins had transformed pressure, doubt, and expectation into a breathtaking display of talent and expression. Finally, the last note rang out, clear and resonant, filling the auditorium with its lingering echo. For a brief moment, there was silence, as if the entire world had paused to absorb the impact of the performance. Then the applause erupted, growing louder and louder, filling the space with energy and admiration. People stood, clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes, others with wide smiles of awe. The twins smiled at each other, a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet triumph on their faces. They had achieved what they had set out to do. They had performed flawlessly under pressure and won the hearts of everyone present. Backstage, the crew whispered in amazement, sharing their astonishment at the twins' skill and composure. Even Maestro Takahashi, who had attempted to intimidate them, was forced to acknowledge their talent. He remained silent for a moment, a rare gesture of respect from a man known for his critical eye. Haruto and Akiko had not only completed a challenging performance, they had inspired everyone in the room. Their success was a testament to years of dedication, practice, and an unbreakable bond between siblings. The audience continued to cheer as the twins left the stage. Haruto and Akiko held their heads high, feeling the pride of accomplishment and the satisfaction of having met the challenge. They had faced doubt, pressure, and scrutiny, yet they had emerged victorious. The maestro, who had once doubted their ability, now watched them leave with silent respect, recognizing the extraordinary performance he had just witnessed. The twins' journey on stage had reached its peak, and the memory of their triumph would remain with everyone present for years to come. Haruto and Akiko knew that this moment would stay with them forever. They had played not just for applause or recognition, but to express the depth of their talent and dedication. They had shown that with focus, determination, and a shared bond, it was possible to rise above doubt and pressure. The maestro, the audience, and the viewers at home had all witnessed a performance that would be remembered as a milestone in the twins' lives. A moment when their hard work, courage, and unity created something truly extraordinary. As the applause gradually faded, the twins exchanged a look that spoke volumes. They had faced the challenge, conquered it, and shared a story through their music that would resonate long after the performance ended. They had turned a moment of potential humiliation into triumph, proving not only their skill but their resilience and heart. The memory of this performance would guide them in all their future endeavors, a reminder that true talent shines brightest when tested under pressure. The applause continued as Haruto and Akiko walked off the stage, their hearts still racing from the intensity of the performance. Every step backstage felt surreal. They could hear the audience cheering, the sound echoing through the corridors, and they knew they had created something extraordinary. For years, they had dreamed of performing on such a stage, but nothing had prepared them for the overwhelming mix of excitement, relief, and pride they felt in that moment. Backstage, the crew and production team were buzzing with excitement. Everyone wanted to congratulate the twins, to capture a glimpse of the performers who had just delivered a performance that would be remembered for years. Cameras were flashing, microphones were being handed over, and questions about their preparation, focus, and emotions were being asked from every direction. Haruto and Akiko smiled politely, answering as best they could, though their minds were still partially on the music they had just played. They knew that the real victory was not in the applause or the interviews but in the performance itself, in the music they had shared. The maestro, who had remained silent during the immediate aftermath, approached the twins with a measured step. His expression, usually stern and critical, was now softer, almost contemplative. He had seen countless young musicians, many of whom had cracked under pressure or failed to meet the technical demands of challenging pieces. Yet these twins had not only met the challenge, they had exceeded it. Their skill, precision, and emotional depth had caught him completely off guard. He nodded silently, a rare gesture of respect from a man who rarely gave praise freely. Haruto and Akiko exchanged a glance, sensing the acknowledgement from the maestro. It was a quiet moment, but one that meant a great deal. For years, they had faced teachers, judges, and audiences who doubted their ability or underestimated their talent. Yet here, under the most intense scrutiny, they had proven themselves. The maestro's silent respect validated not only their performance but the countless hours of practice, the sacrifices, and the unwavering dedication they had invested in their craft. News of the performance began to spread almost immediately. Social media lit up with clips of the twins, with viewers expressing astonishment at their talent and poise. Comments poured in from around the world, praising not only their technical skill but the emotional depth of their playing. Articles were written, interviews were requested, and the story of the twins' triumph became a symbol of dedication and resilience. The performance had transcended entertainment. It had become an inspiration. Despite the attention, Haruto and Akiko remained grounded. They knew that talent alone was not enough. It was discipline, practice, and an understanding of the music that allowed them to perform under such pressure. They had learned to trust each other, to communicate without words, and to rely on their shared bond to navigate challenges. It was this connection, honed over years of practice together, that allowed them to perform flawlessly when it mattered most. In the days that followed, invitations to perform at prestigious venues began to arrive. Music schools, orchestras, and international competitions recognized the twins' potential and wanted them to share their talent on a larger stage. Haruto and Akiko felt a mixture of excitement and humility. They had achieved something remarkable, but they knew that this was only the beginning of their journey. Their performance had opened doors, but it also set a standard for the level of commitment and artistry they would need to maintain moving forward. Maestro Takahashi, reflecting on the performance, shared his thoughts in interviews. He spoke of the rare talent and synchronization of the twins, acknowledging that their performance had been beyond what he had anticipated. His words, though carefully chosen, carried genuine respect. He had seen many skilled performers, but the way the twins combined technical mastery with emotional expression was something exceptional. His recognition further solidified their achievement in the eyes of the music community and the public. Haruto and Akiko continued to practice, knowing that each performance demanded focus, preparation, and heart. They were no longer just the talented twins from a small town. They had become musicians whose skill could inspire and move audiences. They embraced the responsibility that came with this recognition, understanding that their journey was ongoing. Each performance, each note played, was an opportunity to grow, to refine their artistry, and to connect with people through the universal language of music. The memory of that live television performance stayed with them. They often reflected on the pressure, the intensity, and the feeling of being watched by so many eyes, and how they had transformed that pressure into a triumph. It was a lesson in perseverance, focus, and the power of belief in oneself and in the bond they shared. Every challenge they would face in the future would be met with the knowledge that they had overcome one of the most intense experiences in their early careers and had done so with grace and excellence. For audiences, that performance became a story of inspiration. People talked about how two young musicians had faced doubt, pressure, and skepticism, and had not only survived but excelled beyond expectations. It was a reminder that talent, combined with discipline, courage, and trust, could overcome even the most intimidating challenges. Haruto and Akiko had become examples not only to other musicians but to anyone striving to achieve their dreams under pressure. The twins also realized the importance of staying humble. While recognition and praise were gratifying, the essence of music was not in accolades but in connection and expression. They continued to practice diligently, always seeking to improve, always striving to express themselves more fully through their music. They knew that talent was only the beginning and that dedication and heart were what turned potential into greatness. Their story spread beyond the music world. People admired their courage, resilience, and teamwork. Teachers used their performance as an example to inspire students. Young musicians saw in Haruto and Akiko a model for overcoming doubt and performing under pressure. Families and communities were reminded of the power of hard work and the importance of nurturing talent with care and dedication. The impact of that performance extended far beyond the studio or the auditorium, touching lives and inspiring dreams. As Haruto and Akiko looked back on the experience, they understood that their journey had changed them. They had faced skepticism, intimidation, and the weight of expectation. Yet they had emerged stronger, more confident, and more connected to each other and to their music. They had transformed a moment of potential humiliation into one of triumph and inspiration. The experience became a cornerstone of their careers and a defining moment in their personal growth. The maestro, reflecting privately, knew he had witnessed something rare and unforgettable. He recognized that while he had attempted to test and challenge the twins, he had also been reminded of the beauty of true talent and dedication. The respect he offered them was not just for their skill but for their perseverance, courage, and ability to rise above fear. In that moment, the dynamics between teacher and student, judge and performer, had shifted, leaving a lasting impression on everyone involved. Years later, Haruto and Akiko would recall that live television performance as a turning point in their lives. It was a moment that had tested them, shaped them, and set the stage for future achievements. They had learned lessons that went beyond music, lessons about focus, resilience, teamwork, and the importance of believing in oneself. Their triumph on that stage remained a source of pride, motivation, and inspiration, a story that would continue to resonate with audiences for generations. The performance, the maestro's humbled reaction, and the audience's overwhelming admiration became a story that transcended the world of music. It was remembered as a moment when talent, preparation, and courage converged to create something extraordinary. Haruto and Akiko had not only performed a piece of music, they had created an experience, a memory, and an example of what was possible when dedication and passion met opportunity. Their journey continued, but that day, that performance, would forever remain a symbol of triumph over doubt and the power of human potential.